All right, and we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel, Sunread Before Mondays. As you guys know, I usually do vlogs of my personal life, and sometimes, well, I'm beginning to share my testimony of coming from the new age. And recently, I got really inspired on sharing a testimony and coming from psychic and medium. So I'm going to introduce you guys to Daisy.
Hi.
She's new to this, and so am I. So bear with us. But pretty much how I found Daisy was I followed this Instagram account called X Psychic Medium or X Psychic Saved. I'll point it out to the description below. But pretty much I was looking at her comments and I was seeing how a lot of people were coming from the new age and especially from the psychic and the mediumship world. So I kind of related to that a lot, and I've been wanting to look for somebody that came out of that because it's very common and it's very misleading because it's so accurate. So yeah, so I brought in Daisy. Start us off with your background and how where you came from and how did you get into that sector.
Well, looking back now in hindsight, I kind of see where it was a perfect storm for something like this to happen in my life. Um, my family were Buddhist, and um, and really all forms of divination were really embraced. And now I look back, as a family, we would go get psychic readings and our palms read and all that. So I never ever thought that that was evil at all. And
Yeah.
I think I was like a very sensitive child, and maybe that just means prone to being oppressed. You know, I'm still learning about that, but as a small child, I would have, I guess, dreams that would come true. And when I would tell my mom about this, she would always say it was a good thing, it was a gift from God. So again, I never saw it as ever potentially bad. And then, and I had a lot of bouts of sleep paralysis as a child, a lot. And it was terrifying. And I didn't know what it was. And and then sometimes I would hear people calling my name, maybe standing outside the window, but when I would go look, nobody was there. And then I had a natural inclination towards the mystical and the magical since I was a young child. And that might have been, the beginning of an oppression, of the door opening to the occult. But again, always um, it was always something interesting and mysterious, never evil or sinister. I didn't see it that way or experience it that way as a child. So, long story short, I had a problematic, troubled relationship with my parents, but specifically my mother. It was emotionally and mentally abusive. And again, that's another doorway to the demonic of abuse, especially starting in childhood. And there's a lot of oppression from my mother, a lot. Like, she really stifled my life and wouldn't let me grow or develop as a person at all. And again, there was a lot of dysfunction there. And I saw I was very isolated as a child. And then especially through the formative years, being a teenager and a young adult, and my life was just like just completely stifled. I didn't get to develop at all. And then, so depression set in very early. Nobody should be depressed at 15 and 16 years old, but that's so common. And and then, even after, I left home, at maybe 19, and out of her house and really out of from under her influence in a lot of ways. But it just was the same, just very oppressed life. It didn't feel like a normal life at all. Like, I didn't get the normal experiences of like dating and friendship and all those social interactions. And Um, so again, looking back now at this stage of my life, I see the oppression started actually with my mother, and then the door to the demonic had been open. I just didn't realize it, and then the demons just sort of finished the job with the oppression.
So question,
So
so did you,
mhm.
sorry to interrupt, so how, so who started like going to the psychic readings? Was it your mom, your dad? Who was the one that started that, and how did that become like a ritual, ongoing thing?
Well, they were born and raised in a Buddhist country where that's the norm. Everyone knows how to read cards. People don't even charge money for it.
Wow.
Everyone is psychic. They'll just come up to you and give you messages, so that's just the norm. And so, and then coming here to the States, it was just a part of life, and they talked about it at home, that and Buddhist dogma like reincarnation and karma and things. So again, that was normal for me. And it
And
took, many.
while the abuse was going on, that the psychic readings was taking place as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so telling a little bit about my background is, so of course I became very unhappy as a very young adult. And so this is where I wish I could go back in time and change things. When when I was dealing with a lot of depression, and like my life was very unhappy, I wish I would have went to church and found Jesus, but instead I went to the bookstore and I went to the self-help section, which is
Mm,
right next to the new age section. I feel like it's one and the same.
mm,
And then also consulting, with psychics, mediums, anybody, because I wanted answers and I wanted relief for, the pain and suffering I was dealing with. And that was the wrong path to take, but that is what happened. And it was is a never ending rabbit hole. You might get the readings. Looking back now, I don't know why people go get readings, because they're never accurate. They might be at best 50% accurate, but I think people are so desperate that they're willing to overlook that and just really glom onto what makes them feel good in that message, and have false hope that this is going to happen, this person will show up. And so that was my life. I went heavily into self-help and the divination world just to find comfort, answers, hope that you know things were going to get better. And that went on for years and years until I got to a point in my life um, where it seemed like my own psychic abilities were awakening. And so really, like, the dreams, the premonition, prophetic dreams were really becoming more frequent. And they, I mean, they would happen. Whatever I dreamed would happen. And so and it was very interesting, but also, it made you think um that it was helpful, because it gives you a glimpse into the future. And I think that's what a lot of people want. They want either information or a sense of control over their lives and destiny.
mhm.
And then I got to this point in my life where um I don't know how that even happened. I just came across on YouTube some videos about, like, ancient Egyptian, I guess, occultism, and but it's known as like hidden knowledge.
Mm,
And
okay.
really what that is occult knowledge. It's sinister and evil, but hidden means, people have the thinking that it was hidden from us to keep us from being enlightened or empowered, so
Mm,
that people, specifically the church, would have control over us. But that's
mhm.
really twisted and backwards. Um,
Can you tell us a little bit more about that ancient Egyptian hidden knowledge? How did that look like? and how did you fall into that? Did you think that was
Um,
more like an awakening of your psychic abilities?
it really was. And I wasn't even looking for anything like that. At that time, I didn't even know what like Reiki was or anything like that. But I feel like that I was led to that by the dark side because it just popped up on my YouTube you know, and so it's the knowledge basically is the Egyptian postures that you see in the ancient like art and carvings, how they're kind of standing in weird poses. That each of those poses, like yoga, it corresponds to something and it
Mm,
means something or it channels some sort of energy. And so I got this book by a guy named Jason Quitt, and he through channeling he channeled and put together all these postures, Egyptian postures, and what they meant. And
mm,
then, but it was all about healing or empowerment. Again, nothing like evil on the surface. So I just tried like a few of those poses, and there wasn't even that many in the book, maybe 20 postures. But I tried it, and immediately I'll tell you, like this magnetic energy just started like coming out of my hands and stuff and it was real. And then I was channeling without even knowing it because my
wow.
hands would move on their own and because of this magnetic force
Wow.
and and my hands would move on and now I know it's levitation and like but again I was just real curious so I wasn't scared and I just wondered what would happen and I started moving into all these other Egyptian postures that were not even in the book. So I never even knew about it. And then after a while, I started going into yoga poses. And I never did yoga before, wasn't familiar with it at all. But obviously I could recognize these are yoga poses. And
Wow. So you were doing
and
these yoga poses and you didn't even know that that was meant for yoga?
exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's it. That's why that body of knowledge, the Eastern, the Egyptian, the Babylonian, it's
Yeah.
all occult hidden knowledge. It is, and people think of it as, exercises or again, some energy work that's beneficial, but it is all demonic. Okay, I learned
Wow.
that the hard way. But so yeah, I was doing yoga without even knowing, like
Yeah.
yeah, I never, ever, ever once did yoga before or Tai Chi. I was doing like the Tai Chi, the things I was doing, I could recognize them. Just, of course, you'd see it around, but like, I was like, oh, this is Tai Chi, that's Chinese too. And so just a little bit of all the different cultures I was channeling and doing without knowing it and recognizing it later. My fingers and stuff would go into mudras. I didn't know what mudras were at the time. And but then, I could look them up online and be like, I did that without again no knowledge of it before. So and then so that went on for a while and then I realized what my hands were doing was basically like energy work, sort of like Reiki, but really honestly more advanced than Reiki. That's how I saw it. And it looked like it was doing healing work on me. And then I was becoming aware of spirits and my third eye opened then. And again, it's almost like I was catching up to what was happening to me because I didn't study any of this. I didn't have any knowledge of it, but I could feel my third eye like open, like vibrating and pulsating so much that would make my teeth chatter, like shake a little, like vibrate. And then I started channeling images and symbols and I had like a whole stack of symbols and only very few of them I knew what they were and to this day but they're very intelligent honestly very beautiful and intricate. I don't have them now because I threw them all away um but again I thought this whole world of hidden knowledge was opening up to me and it was but I just thought it was good and not bad and then Um, so
You
then,
felt, sorry to interrupt. You felt it was good because so you went from going to psychic mediums with your family, then you opened the door to the ancient Egyptians' hidden knowledge, and that opened the door to like healing to yourself, and then that opened
yeah.
the door to opening your third eye, right? You started getting images, and how did that feel? Good, like what besides the healing? How else did you see? Like okay, like this is okay. Like how did that perceive?
Okay, this is because they were very comforting. And at this
Okay.
time in my life, the spirits that I was aware of all of a sudden, or just the insight and knowledge that would just come to me, was
Mhm.
always very loving, was under the guise of being very helpful. They were so patient and kind. And here's where they're very manipulative, because I didn't have a good relationship with my mother, so I always felt that that was lacking in my life. And so they made themselves to feel very like maternal and loving and looking out for me and helping me, let me heal your wounds, like that. That's why it felt good. And I never thought about demons or anything like that before. I didn't even have a concept of sin or biblical right and wrong, because I definitely wasn't Christian. And so because I didn't see anything negative about it. It was only helpful. Um, and they were very kind and loving, patient. I would describe them as like they felt like the best parents ever. That's how they felt, honestly.
Wow.
And I didn't know that like evil spirits could produce a good feeling like that. I didn't know that they had that capability. That's the scary part. That's why people are so trusting of like spirit guides and things like
Yeah.
that. Hmm.
And
Okay.
so for the sorry for the when you say it felt like good parents, can you
Mhm.
dig can you go a little bit deeper into that? Was it multiple that you would see, or how did that came to be?
Yeah, at first I wasn't aware of actually who I was talking to. It just felt like a collective. And
Okay.
it felt good because I would have a question about anything, whether it was my own life or some esoteric thing question, and they would answer. They would give me answers and information, and it was always, again, very loving and helpful. Like, oh, this makes so much sense, here's how to look at this. That was their guidance. That's why I would call them like spirit guides, because they were guiding me in my own personal life. Like, whatever I was coming across, they're like, this is how, almost like your own personal guru, like, here's how to think about it. And it was very wise. It felt very wise. And again, very kind, loving. If I didn't understand something, they were always so patient. They would explain it in another way. So you develop a relationship with them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they start to become very, very important to you. Um, because that seems like a gift to have these loving, wise, otherworldly spirits guiding you personally. And then they really give you a sense of being self-empowered, self-healing, those type of things. They never direct you to a god. Everything's within you. And but it's so, again, they're very good at what they do. They've been doing this since the beginning of time. So for a human, it's very easy to be duped.
Yeah.
Um, so it was kind of something I just kept privately for a year, because I didn't understand it or know what it was. I just spent this year with them and just expanded so much in the psychic occult area. And then um and then it just kind of dawned on me to like try it with other people. So because I was like understanding this was like energy healing. And
Mhm.
so I'm like, so I have a gift, like it's meant to be shared and I can help people. And so
Mhm.
I started working on friends and family, and like I'm telling you, like one by one they all had amazing experiences. They were able to see other worlds and beings, angels. They weren't really angels, they're demons, but they look like angels and gave them, a good feeling and stuff like that. Or, they got messages, and it's like that. When I was working on that, world opened up to them.
Did you
And
ever tarot cards on them?
no, I felt like I didn't need tarot cards, because I could just, because after a while of doing it, I would start to know stuff about people that I really shouldn't know, because they were perfect strangers to me, and then they were coming to me with specific questions. I have this, whether it's a physical thing like illness or injury, or whatever was going on in their life, physical, spiritual, emotional, whatever. Um, and I was like, and I would just tune in when I was working on them, doing the healing work, and the spirits would come, and whether it was my spirit guides or their spirit guides, I could tell them all that, and give them the messages from the spirit side, and they would tell me things about these people. So again, there was that validation where you think that this, because it is so accurate, you're like, something otherworldly but good is going on, because again, they are always very positive and loving and helpful. Although now I see, now looking back, that they were slowly just guiding me and anyone else just to destruction. But they were
Hmm.
so slick about it that we didn't see that as weird. It's almost like they could just lead us to jump off a cliff, and we wouldn't even think anything about that.
Wow.
And so a lot of their and sometimes, like one lady came to me because, I guess, some examples, like her ex died, the father of her child, and she said, I just feel him around me all the time. I feel like he's trying to tell me something, you know but I don't know what. So could you tell me? So I was like, I can try, and so when she came, like, yeah, I did connect with him immediately, and whatever I was saying to her was spot on about him. But
Wow.
um but it wasn't him. And I don't think we can communicate with the deceased. And they would always give prescriptions, now looking back, for whatever was going on with the person, and a lot of times they would refer them to different foods, yoga. Like, they did that for me. Like, I was, they pointed me to yoga, to do yoga, to go to a chiropractor, and it did help. But again, yoga is actually very evil, and that's their thing. And for one thing, they're the ones causing a lot of. Here's why it's so hard to get out of that, because it's like a lie within a lie within a lie. But they are the ones that are causing a lot of the physical pain. They can do that. They can cause illness and injury and discomfort in your body, and everything else, depression, the mental. They're perfectly capable of that. That's the unfortunate part. So they're causing it, and then they give you the remedy for it. So it's horrible too.
It's almost
um
like they want you to depend on them. Like they'll give you something for you to depend on them and go back to them.
That's a perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the whole like holistic, take salt baths with essential oils, or burn a candle this way, or that was like their remedies. And
Like an offering for them in a way.
yeah, I guess. But yeah, that's what they did. So it was like this never ending hamster wheel um of following after their advice. Like, you do this, and here's the remedy. And then I guess, like, something else would come up. And there's a whole body of work about that, like life lessons. I don't know if you're familiar, like especially like Dr. Brian Weiss, Michael Newton. They're like the trailblazers of that field. And it's like you come in with life lessons and here, and so you have like these soul ties to people, and they're playing this role in your life. And so it's never a negative. Even if someone like assaulted you or something like that, you're supposed to feel self-empowered about that, because it's like, how am I supposed to overcome this? That's the goal. And so that's kind of like, I feel like, that body of work is very demonic too. So it just keeps you in this never ending search and never ending having to work for something and towards something. It never ends. Like, um and for, yeah, like for people that come would want, like physical healing, they might get that, but then something emotional or another physical thing would pop up. So yeah, it was just never ending. And then they always had like a whole backstory of for what that was, the demons posing as spirit guides or even angels. And it's a lot of times it was like a past life thing. I don't know how many past lives I've seen with people. And again, that's all false demonic
Can you
doctrine.
can you dive into the past life? I know that a lot of people, including myself, I was very, very always curious about past life and wondered like what was my past life and who's my next life soulmate. Can you dive a little bit deeper as to how you were able to see that that was false and that was not true? That once we die, and either we go to heaven or we go to hell, but yeah, I would like for you to dive into and see and how were you able to come to that conclusion that it was false.
Okay, so I guess for me, a specific example would be, at some point also, I I started to have, and I'm not Native American, but I started to really feel a connection to Native Americans.
Okay.
Like that was my family, like my past life. And ever since I was a child, I was drawn to the Native American culture. And 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 then and again, they started to put these things on my TV, because again, I don't know why, like it would just certain things would pop up, but there was like this Native American song, and I latched onto it so hard. It was like, it was not rational at all. Like it was like an obsession, like becoming obsessed with like the Native American past, like times of the past. Like it was like, and again, that's just their way of destroying you, because can you live in the past, but
Right.
but
Okay.
it keeps you so obsessed with that, like, then you have family and friends and soulmates that are connected you from past lives, and it has you like seeking that out, not not looking at what's really true, real,
Happening right
present and of
now.
God. And so
Mhm.
it's either always keeping you in the future or the past. And again, just chasing like it's like a snipe hunt. You're chasing something that doesn't even exist. But anyways, long story short, so they put this, they just start putting this on like my social media and stuff, all this Native American stuff, because I wasn't looking for it. Again, just popped up because that's where they wanted to take me, just like with the Egyptian stuff. I didn't even know to look up something like that. They brought it to me. And then and I was having a really, like, it was really like a dark time. I was like having a hard time with dealing with this Native American thing, because I'm like, why am I so obsessed with them? Because like I even started going to dig in the creek to find like arrowheads, because I used to play in the creek as a kid and I would just find them. But it was like I just had to like be connected to them. Um and ultimately, you know, it led, I'm from the Midwest. That's where all this stuff happened. But there was this overwhelming sense of I need to move to Arizona, because that's where my family is, my native family. And that's what I was looking for. I felt homesick for family and a place that just, that I didn't even know existed. It was a weird feeling. But anyways, so I was having trouble like dealing with that. And so I met I met a psychic. Actually, she was from Florida, and we just talked on the phone. She was freaky accurate. And it's funny, I used to admire people that were really accurate. I thought they were the most gifted, but now I see the most accurate psychics are actually the most oppressed. And
Uh,
and she, I mean, I didn't tell her anything. She didn't know me. We were talking on the phone. She immediately goes, um, she goes, "Oh, you have this spirit guide, and it's your mother from a past life. You were both like Hopi Indians, healers, and
wow.
she was amazing. You traveled all over the western part of the country, and a few hundred years ago, and she's amazing. She's this healer, and she is your spirit guide." And I felt that before she even said it, because like I said, I was really drawn to Native Americans, and
Yeah.
she's
You're like, this is
and
this
like
must be true.
yeah, how could you think it was anything but that? And she went into a lot of detail about that. And then shortly after that, um my spirit guides, because I had a healing table, it's a massage bed, but it was the healing table where I worked on people, and my spirit guides had me lay down on my own healing bed. And because they could kind of control me in this way, not against my will. I allowed it, but they could like move me in this like levitation type of way. And so I just, and plus my trust in them, so I always did what they said. And so I laid down, and I'm telling you, it's like the fabric of time, the dimensions just opened, and I was peering through time into the past, and I saw this beautiful Native American woman. She was elderly, she had the long gray white hair, but she was beautiful, and she was standing in front of these like reddish mountains that you see like in Utah and like the Southwest. Um and like the wind was just like gently blowing her hair. She was smiling really serenely, um and I knew that that was my spirit guide mom. And just like that, psychic confirmed it. And then she was who I was communicating with a lot. And when you're in the new age, like all your friends are new agers, like you just kind of find each other. And
Yeah.
that's not coincidence either. The demons put you together, and so a lot of the people that I became friends with were really gifted psychics and healers, and they all would see her, this Native American woman there, and so they were all confirmed, like we were all being fed the same lies, and
Wow.
so just confirming it to each other. And yeah, like my friend Josh, who runs a healing center, I've tried to reach out to him, but God hasn't opened his ears or heart yet. But he would always say like, yeah, your ancestor is, your mother, your Native American mother. She keeps coming to me, and like she has messages for you, and they were just so loving. And it was about our life together in the past. And again, well, you see how manipulative that is, because what is it that I wanted most in life was a mother, and one I had a good relationship with. So they take all these elements, like if you were naturally drawn to anything, the Native American culture, or I don't know, World War II era, whatever, they will make that a reality for you.
Wow.
And um and same with the crystals. Um any any object or thing, whatever you think about, the whole manifesting thing, they will validate that, and they're capable of it. If you think it, a lot of it's our imagination. I think that's actually a bad attribute, to have an overactive imagination. Whatever you think, they'll validate, and they'll make it true in real form, in some way, shape, or form.
To
And
draw you in.
so, yeah, to just lead you further and further
From,
astray.
yeah.
You're going from reality, you're going from God, what's real. You're going into this fantasy world, illusions, because the visions, as real as they seem, it's an illusion. And same with the near death experiences, the out of body experience, the astral projections. They are fantastically created, and you will believe that you were there. The feelings, whatever beings you meet, but it's all in a big illusion. It's not real. And that's why, in the Bible and, Jesus' teaching is, you stay focused on the word and on him, on what's real. Don't wander off into la la land, because the demons will be there to meet you and to validate whatever you want to hear, whatever you want to see, whatever you want to feel.
Wow.
They can make it happen, and they are happy to deceive you.
Wow.
Like with crystals, like I had some real experiences with crystals. Like they would um okay, so like for example, there's patchy tears, that crystal, and it's supposed to like bring harmony to like relationships or something. And like so I got into it with somebody, and it kind of made me sad. So I was like, I'm gonna use this crystal, and like and using it, and within minutes felt so much better, and then and like happy and uplifted. So again, you think these things are helpful, and then but then immediately I started to feel really sick, like as if I had the full-blown flu. And I thought I'd have to call off work the rest of the week. That's how sick I felt all of a sudden. But then I just went to bed, and like and the next morning I was perfectly fine. And so I was like, what was that? And when I looked it up, it was that crystal is also a detox crystal. That's what the property someone gave it. And none of that's true. Again, if you say it, the demons will make it happen. So this detox crystal, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I was flooded with toxins. I was using it for grief, which is another one of its attributes, but I forgot about the detoxing part. That's why I felt so sick all of a sudden. It's just like if you get a massage, you'll get flooded with toxins real quick. And so a
Hmm.
lot of people feel sick after. It's why you're supposed to drink a lot of water and all that. And like, but it was really happening. And then again, with this other crystal, I was using it for some emotional reason, but it also works, multi-levelly with like the physical. And like, it's supposed to be a like a liver or detox stone or something, because after I used it, I started getting all these rashes like on my arms and stuff. And um, that's um, that's in alignment with if people have like liver, problems with their liver. You can get these rashes. Like I looked all that up. So again, I'm thinking crystals are really powerful. Like they have some sort of consciousness. They're tools for us to use, but they're just rocks and stones. It's just demons are attached to them. So you use them in that way, the demons will make whatever happen. Just like
Wow.
with sage and anything else with like shamanism too. That's also demonic.
And for the crystals, how were you able to again come to that conclusion that this is, well, I guess we're talking about the experiences that you have, and we'll dive more later on deeper to how all of this, you came from believing, feeling confident, feeling good about it, to oh, what am I getting myself into? So let's talk about now how all of those things that you're experiencing, how you went to, well, this is might not be good for me, and this actually might be a lie. How did that transition happen?
I can take absolutely no credit for that. I let them literally lead me to my own death, is what I was doing. Um, and just so blissfully, ignorantly unaware of that. I was following them for like 5 years faithfully, and their advice ended up being horrible, but I couldn't see it because of how sly and manipulative they are.
What
And
advice would it be? Like, can you share an example of like,
a lot of it was, well, for one thing, they were deteriorating my health to the point where I couldn't work anymore. That's how bad it was. And I would, go to the doctor, multiple times trying to figure it out, and he couldn't. He tested me for anything and everything. And on paper, I was a picture of health. So, he's just like, keep an eye on it. But I mean, it was getting so bad. I couldn't work anymore. I was literally shutting down, and doctors couldn't help. I couldn't do any sort of energy healing on myself to help or anything. So I
Wow.
was just drinking to deal with the pain. Like, that's how bad it was. I was like I turned into an alcoholic. And and that's also that's a portal. Addictions are portals to the demonic too. So it was so multi-layered, like how much they were oppressing me, and I didn't realize it. And
Mm.
but yeah, I was so, my health was deteriorating fast for no reason. I was not even a functional person, couldn't work, really. Being awake was painful. I would spend like a good 18 hours a day in bed,
Wow.
and just drinking and wine. And then and so okay, so a little bit before that happened, before my I was shutting down and dying, because that's where they lead you, is to death and destruction. And
Correct.
and um so a little bit before that, here's where the grace of God comes in. So I did have a client, and and it was a lady I didn't know, but it was like a friend of a friend, and she came to me, um and I met and when I talked to her on the phone, there was something that I immediately knew I was supposed to work with her, and I was excited to, and I didn't know what it was. But when I worked on her, I met, well, there was this beautiful angel that came in, and he had like a white hooded robe on that covered his face, and he said, my name is Gabriel. And I was just like, the archangel Gabriel. And he said, I am the messenger of God. And then he instructed me to kneel and pray. And then he knelt and prayed beside me. And when he did that, of this beautiful woman, who I immediately knew was the Virgin Mary, came in, and she was tossing, red and pink rose petals around. Um and it was just a minute, but then she left, and then Gabriel, the archangel, followed after her. And I knew immediately my life was going to be different after that. I never wanted anything to do with Jesus, with religion, with Christianity, Catholicism, nothing, nothing. That was not even a passing thought ever in my mind. And actually, in the new age, they're actually very anti Jesus and true Jesus and true Christianity. And so
Mm.
that's where I was at. And then after that, I just couldn't get them out of my mind. To be in the presence of such holiness, it you can't like help but not be affected. And immediately after that, I wanted to start going to church, because I was interested in Mary. Like, I just wanted more of her, and specifically the Catholic Church, because of Mary. And so, long story short, so I made my friend take me to mass, because she grew up Catholic, and it was just a foreign world to me. And the first few times, and being there and like listening to the Bible readings from like the priest and stuff, it was just immediately healing. And I love this passage the most, where it says, lean not on your own understanding, but on God, follow God, with all your heart, and he'll make straight your paths. And that like went into my heart, and it felt so good, um because I was like, that's that is I felt like that's right. That's true. Like, I've been doing things my own way, leaning on my own understanding of
Wow.
all this supernatural, esoteric stuff. And it when I heard that, I was just like, and so anyway, so I was just like, always. So I went to church, every week, and I was just, but at the same time, that's when I was feeling really sick, and um and then I felt drawn to water a few months after I saw Mary and Gabriel. I was really drawn to water, and I was always in the dam. Like here we have like monsoon season, so there's a lot of water in the dam, and I would sit in the dam and the water would just crash over my head, and I just the thought and the came over me. I was just like, there's not enough water in the world to wash away all the heaviness of life. And I just would walk out of the dam feeling sad. But I was like, and then I was always like in like the swimming pool at my place or taking baths. Like I was so drawn to water, like for a solid month. And it was like, now looking back, I think I was subconsciously just wanting to wash away life and sin and heaviness without knowing it.
Yeah.
And um and then one night, I was feeling like especially bad, and my stupid spirit guides, of course, like do yoga. So like I was like doing some stretches like before going to bed, and then immediately, just all of a sudden, Jesus was there in my room, and he put his hand on my forehead and he said, I can heal your brokenness if you let me. And I didn't even know what that meant, but as bad as I felt, as much as I was hurting, you know, um, I was, that's just what I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And again, at the time, I wanted nothing to do with Christianity. And, as a child, we briefly went to a Baptist church, and I wanted nothing to do with baptism at that point. I watched my dad and my older sister get baptized, and I was offended by the whole thing. And and luckily I didn't get baptized. Um, but Jesus showed me like an image of that old baptism pool from my childhood church, and everything in my heart was just like, yes, like I want that. And he said, why do you think you've been drawn to water lately? And um but I was so far from God at that point, and I didn't even realize how far from God I was, because I always believed in God. There's never a time I didn't believe in God or have him on my mind. It's just I didn't know God. I didn't know who he was. I had this distorted, horrible, idea of what God was. Um, so and then especially with Jesus, like I was just, as good as that his offer sounded, um I was like, but first, before I accept, I want to know you for you, not who I was taught you were, because that really tainted my view on Christianity. That happens in church. It's full of people, and people are imperfect. So
Yeah, and that's one thing that I want to touch on, Daisy, really quick. So I know that you said that your family would visit to Buddhist temples. So they also visited church as well, and how did that church hurt happen? So basically, it was church hurt that made you not want to go to church or know Jesus or anything to do with Christianity.
yeah, and my parents, culturally, they were born and raised in a Buddhist country, and but they raised the kids here in the States. So because of some friends or something, when we were real small, we went to a Baptist church.
Okay.
But I really think we were out of church when I was like 8 or 10 after that, and we were never in church again my whole life. And so I just know I didn't, again, it's not God, and it's unfortunate we mistake Christians for Christ sometimes, and like,
Yeah.
so um um yeah, so I just told Jesus, I was like, as much as I needed and wanted to heal, I was like, I want to get to know you first
Okay.
for who you are, not who I was told you were, told that you were, what I thought you were. And he was around me, for days after that, and he would he he would instruct me to fast and pray, and the beautiful things he would say, and for example, with the fasting, like I was never successful at fasting before, and I never did it for spiritual reasons, just like, health or losing weight reasons, but it never worked out. But he said, I need you to fast and pray in my name. And so I did, and I was like happy and excited to. I was really surprised at how easy it was to
Mm.
fast with him. And and I still had all this energy. I'd go for hikes and stuff. And he said, this was an exercise in faith, because if you can see that you can trust me to sustain you in your very need for food, then you can trust me to sustain you in all your needs.
Oh wow.
And he was really wanting that dependence on him. Like, he's our creator, he's our father, and he's not going to lead us astray. So it was like an exercise in faith. And one of the very first things, here's the difference between the spirit guides and Jesus immediately off the
That's what I
bat.
wanted to ask you, yeah, because I'm sure the audience is probably wondering, like, because you were able to see the Native American, like, you were able to see as well these physical beings, right? So how are you able to differentiate, like, this is actually Jesus, and I know that this is from the Lord, our Father, than the demons? How are we able to do that?
And yeah, and at some point I wasn't trusting, and I didn't know. I just didn't know. And it was just like, um how it's just like, where does it lead you? And this is the example. My spirit guides, she's
Okay.
supposed to be my mom, my Native American mom, and they're supposed to love me and be so enlightened. But they told me pretty early on, once I started to build like a rapport and a trust in them, they turned me even more against my biological mom. They said, they used the example of that movie Tangled, that Disney movie Tangled. They're like, and it was so perfect, the perfect lie, because Tangled, that Rapunzel, she's a healer in that movie. And I had these healing abilities. They're like, you're her, and like, you know, the mom that locked her away in the tower that kidnapped her, that's not really her real mom. And she locked her away in a tower her whole entire life. She was isolated. And I mean, that spoke perfectly to me. Like my mother, they're like, she's like, what did they call her? They they call it they said like she was like the bad mom, basically, just like in the movie, the one that locked you away in the tower and suppressed your life. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And so like my spirit guide mom was the good, my real mom, the good mom. So they furthered that wedge and didn't want me to and so that was their advice, like, she's the bad mom. This is what she isolated you. She's not your real mom. The spirit guide is your real mom, the loving one, the one that helps you and is supportive. And so but the way they said it just made sense to me. And again, it was in a loving way. And like the difference between like that and Jesus, um when I because that's why I was like, I want to get to know Jesus for who he really is. And like I just wasn't sure, and like but where he led me was so vastly polar opposite to what the new age and the spirit guides led me to. Like they furthered the
Wow.
rift with my biological mom. He but Jesus, immediately after, he's like doing the fasting and prayer, and being like, you can trust me, trust exercises. When I got comfortable with him, immediately one of the things he said I had to do was forgive my mom, my biological mom. He said I had to, and he didn't say, like, I'm saying in an authoritative way, that's not, he's very loving and kind, but like he said, we need to pray for her. And the first night, I got down on my knees and prayed. Like I didn't even know how to pray. I'm like, this is how I think you pray, like by your bed, kneel beside your bed, So like that's what I did. So and he was there with me. And I was trying to pray for her and I couldn't. I couldn't. I just started crying and I'm like, it felt like betraying myself, as if I excused her behavior or whatever. I don't know. That my heart was not
In it.
was hardened to her, and it wasn't forgiving. And that's a huge thing. Like, you have to forgive. Um,
Yeah. Not easy.
so yeah, and so that's what that was his one of his besides instructing me to like fast and pray. And he said his three instructions in the beginning were keep your mind. He said stay in church, stay in prayer, and keep your mind on God. And so,
Wow.
when I looked at that, I was like, no demon's gonna say that. So
Right. Yeah.
like, uh,
They want to
so
further you away from Jesus, not bring you closer to him. So
exactly. And so yeah, so I was always in church, starting just the teeny tiny baby steps of familiarizing myself with the Bible, which I never opened, before, but listening to the priests and homilies and stuff like that. And then and and then so like yeah, so that soon after, like within a week, I would say, he was like, we need to pray for your mom. And I couldn't, and I just started crying. I was like, oh, I can't pray for her. It feels like betraying myself. And he's like, okay, he just will try again tomorrow. And I went to bed, and then the next day, he's like, let's try again. And so I went to go pray for her, and it had to be the Holy Spirit, the grace, he gave me to, because all of a sudden, it was just easy, and I could understand it from his perspective, not my own wounded, hurt perspective, but from his perspective. And it was so easy it was so easy, and this burden just was lifted.
wow, amen.
And I could forgive her. And like, Christmas was coming up, and so I was like, and we had been estranged for years, hadn't talked for years. So I was like, well, I will reach out by sending her a Christmas gift. And she was so happy, and that started us, and then she did call me. And then and that started us being able to have that forgiveness and healing between us. Something I honestly, I never thought I would. I thought I would be estranged for her for life. That's how it felt. With my own works, as a human and a broken human, and then especially under the influence of the demonic. I never thought we would reconcile, but with Jesus, immediately we could. And she
Amen.
actually did apologize, and I never thought I would get an apology from her in life. I wanted one, but I never thought I would get one. And she
Yeah.
did apologize. And it's a work in progress. But yeah, I don't feel any of that hatred and animosity towards her anymore, like I harbored my whole entire life against her. And so, you know it's things like that that I know it's like the true Jesus. And
Yeah.
and um and because, eventually, again, it's just such a long story. But what was happening was, as I was reading my Bible, staying in church, having this personal relationship with Jesus, and we all have a one-on-one. With him, it feels like no one else in the world exists. Like he created you and nothing else. Like that's how invested he is in us, because he did create each one of us. And so you know, he did in a way that I guess he could reach me, and that was by this fantastic way of like actually seeing him and talking to him. Not, but for others, it's just him speaking into their heart, and but he knows how to reach each person because he made us. So that's how he did it with me. And just over time, like as I was going, following after him, um, and I started to not trust the things that I was doing before, like the healing work. or, you know, I would still have clients, and I would just block myself because I'm like, I don't want to hear about past lives. Past life stuff would always come up for them. And I was just like, I don't want to hear past life stuff. And or I
Wow.
don't know, I started to be resistant, not so open in the sessions. And then I just started to lose interest. Like I just didn't want to do it. And then, you know, with the spirit guides, I was starting to be like, I could see the difference, the night and day difference, where what they were doing with me and what Jesus was doing with me was not matching up. You know, it didn't mix. It can't mix. You know, and I was just like, I started looking at 'em like thinking like back on their advice and like and their guidance. I was like,
Wow.
I don't know, something's not right there. You know,
Tell me what advice that they gave that you're like, this is not adding up to what I'm being, taught by Jesus or learning from church or reading my Bible. Like, tell me what was that confusion that you're like, what?
Well, again, you know, why I kind of brought up the work of Brian Weiss and Michael Newton, because that's a big one in the new age. It's like it's the whole you're only here to learn. You're on earth to learn life lessons and grow and you know, ascend and try to get yourself out of the karmic reincarnation loop, you know, which is also a Buddhist teaching too. And so and so you know, because of my past, I had a very troubled relationship with men, and because of what, the abuse and stuff like that, and then so that was always very elusive for me, and it became very painful. And I think people have, you know, some things are more, their wounds are deeper than others, and for me, it was that. And
Okay.
these guides, you know, they're like, they were telling me, because my back started hurting, and like it got progressively worse and worse and worse until I was just like, I just want to throw up and cry at the same time. And over a year's period, and again, no medical reason to feel that way, but I was, one day the spirit guides told me, they're like, well, you know, this this lack of, you know, men in your life, because I kind of swore off men at that point, and you know, for years. And like um they're like, well, the lack of that in your romance in your life has manifested as back pain. Again, that's a very new agey term, you know, like if you have this pain in your body, it's, you know, because of improper energy flow or some spiritual mental thing manifesting in a physical way in your body. And like and it made sense to me when they said that. And you know, the second they said that, they're like, the lack of, you know, romance in men in your life has manifested back pain. The back pain like immediately went away after a word, after a year of back pain. So I was just like, so that, to me, that's just validation of their wisdom and their, you know, their guidance. I'm like, oh, okay, so like I have to start, you know, I guess opening myself up to men or just dealing with the issues surrounding relationships. And I'm like, well, I guess you'll send them to me, you know. And after not talking to anybody for years, all of a sudden, maybe a week later, the first guy showed up, and then the next one, and then the next one, and it was just like on top of each other. And you know, they were always married men, and it was never a nice single guy that I had a chemistry with. And so it kept me in this loop of like, there's something wrong with me, that there's something broken here, that what am I supposed to fix, you know, what am I supposed to learn, what pattern am I supposed to overcome, those kind of nonsense questions. And like, so again, you know, it's just keeping you in a cycle. And then with each, you know, you're set up for failure, a guy that's not available to you. Yet they would all, but there was actually, they would all fall in love. And, I was like, if only we had met in different circumstances, we'd be riding off into the sunset together, but it could
Yeah.
never be. So
Right.
it was just keeping me in this torment mentally and emotionally, because it wasn't just one. It just kept happening over and over. So you're like, what's wrong here? Like, what's broken? What am I doing wrong? What's going on with my life plan? Or, it's ridiculous now that I look back to
It's
ever have
crazy.
thought in those terms.
Yeah, and it's crazy to that they just like when you ask for that, they would send you a married man, like completely opposite for what, God wants you, which is like marriage and, from scratch, first of all, So it's funny to see like that inconsistency there. Like if you go to a sidekick, they'll tell you like, hey, yeah, you know what, you should divorce your husband. Versus if you go to Jesus, like he'll be like, fight for your marriage, go to therapy. So it's just funny how you can see that contrast, and that's when you know that like it's not righteousness or it's not beneficial for you because it will lead to death, like how you were explaining. So it's interesting to see that explaining your experience that they led you to married men, right? Which is
Hmm.
not,
And like especially the Catholics, how they feel about divorce and marriage is a covenant. And
yeah,
I didn't see it that way. Like New Agers don't see it that way. They're like, you're whatever you want, you are completely justified, and you will justify it by saying you're supposed to learn from this, and they're supposed to learn from this. Their wives will learn from this, like, um, and
everybody
and
learning
like
from it.
yeah, that's the thinking. It's ridiculous and it's so evil, but without knowing the word, without understanding the faith, Christianity, without understanding the Lord's decrees, you have no sense of right and wrong at
Yeah.
all. No sense of sin. And that's the devil. Like he has no sense of, doing anything right. And so
Mhm.
um and completely narcissistic and justified and whatever you want, he's where narcissism came from. And um and so yeah, so that was an example. But then, you know Mary, so I know the Christians don't really revere her, but Mary, she would talk to me and too, and she would say, she told me, that like attention from men, that's not the goal. She's like, commitment is the goal, not sex, not attention. Um and that was just so polar opposite of what like the spirit guides were saying. And for the first time, her listening to her, because she's our spiritual mother, and listening to her advice, it would uphold my dignity as a woman and as a person. And that's um where it's very sad, for the human state, especially women, men too, but just
Yeah.
speaking for a second about women, we've forgotten how like beautiful we are, and that we shouldn't be just giving ourselves away. Like, this is, we live in a world of it's hookup culture,
Yeah.
pornography, all that stuff. Like, how we if you valued yourself the way, the Lord values you, what he created you to be, a very beautiful, sacred being in his likeness and image, his child, you wouldn't be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, it's appalling now when I look back on that. But the secular world, that's a whole nother conversation. But I was seeing it. What they were teaching me was upholding my dignity, um, and so I could see like the stark difference. It wasn't, you couldn't blend the two, the New Age and the Christianity. It was completely opposite. And then as I was, doing Bible study, familiarizing myself with the word, and then I could really see how much divination is condemned. And I'm looking, Like, I mean, he says it like every other page, like, so
Yeah.
so I'm like, something's not matching up, and I didn't want to admit it at first,
That point.
but
Yeah.
when because I was just like, I was just, I was like, because it was like years of relationship with these spirit guides, so I'm like, so they weren't real. They were never real. They were never, ancestors from the past or anything like that. They were not angels. Um, I was like, when I put it to the side for a little, and I was just focused on Jesus and church. But when I was ready to confront it, I was just like, I was dumbfounded, just dumbfounded. It took me weeks to let it really sink
Think.
into my brain. I cannot believe how duped I've been, like, just so thoroughly duped. And I was just like, oh, and like I was just floored. And so I just knew anything that's not Christian, anything that's not Jesus, I was like, it's evil. It is. And I just learned, that was affirmed on and on as I continue my relationship with Christ and as he continues to help me heal, so I was dealing with spiritual warfare is what it was. And again, I didn't have a word for that or any sort of understanding or knowledge because again, I thought, that universal spiritualism, new ageism, I didn't know how evil it was. Even like the Eastern other false religions, I'm just gonna say it. They're false religions, they're demonic doctrine. And so what happened, why I was feeling so sick and so bad all the time, was I was very spiritually sick. Um,
Wow.
I, I'm lucky, blessed. And, that was God's protection that I didn't end up full on possessed. Cause I know, like, I have friends and like, yeah, and like, and because we're all channeling and doing all this crazy stuff and tuning in, and so I know people that are dealing with that too, but like, just for me personally, I
Yeah.
was dealing with oppression. And so at some point, God put it in my heart to understand the work of deliverance ministry
Okay.
within the Catholic context is where God sent me. I
Okay.
can't speak to about other people's experiences. I can't judge. I don't know. That's where, God sent me, was the Catholic Church. And they
Okay.
have a wonderful ministry of healing, with the designated priests that are exorcists. And, they and so for 2 weeks straight, I just shut myself in. I just needed to be alone with God. That's what he wanted. And he's like, I really want you to understand this body of work. This is what happened to you, this demonic oppression. And again, that was completely news to me. But I just knew I was just dealing with the effects of it, both physically, spiritually, and emotionally, mentally. And so the exorcist will tell you there's sort of like levels of oppression. First is like an oppression, and it can be like your health, your finances, your relationship, things that they're oppressing, to obsession, to like infestation, where there's a lot of like, like the house is haunted because like evil things were happening there, or like
Mm.
like Ouija boards or murders or something happened there. And then to it's like a gradation to full on possession. And um and they list all the doorways. They're like, you mess around with the cult, traumas, childhood traumas, abuse, addictions, um living in mortal sin. Those are all the doorways to let the demons in. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So uh
You're like, this is
I
a lot. How did you feel when you were being told all of, that information? Because obviously you were, getting back to relationship with Jesus, with God, and how did you take that information in?
it trying to think back. It was a lot of tears, a lot of crying because I look back and I'm just like, oh, like, I was just like, I felt so sorry for the little girl I used to be. And
Mm,
then at the same time, I was just dumbfounded and floored at how deceived we can be, with the divination, the other religions,
mm,
the body of works that are out there with all these authors who are just perpetuating demonic doctrine. Like so many of these authors, and YouTubers and stuff. And it's
mm,
almost like, how do people stand a chance against it? It's just permeates our world. And I was just sad because I everything like the exorcists were talking about, I was experiencing, and I'm just like, all that time that I thought I was on this path of healing and being a healer and all that. I mean, all that was just like a lie. And so um and I was like, I can't believe how far from God I am. That was like surprising because, like I said, it's not like I was a devil worshiper or anything. It's not like I, went to that or anything like that. And God was always number one in my life. I just didn't know him. I had strayed so far from him and didn't know it. So it was really sad, and it's just a lot of tears. And then, having to come to terms, with my past and stuff too. And um, but thankful also because I'm like, would never have found this way on my own. I can't take any credit for it. All I did was make horrible decision after horrible decision of who I was going to follow and what I was listening to and what I was taking in. And to a point where I just was literally just walking into the death's door, the gates of hell. Like, and it was also like scary because I'm like, hell is real. And for new agers and stuff, like, you don't think that. You just think there's like this positive, negative, shadow light thing, or like everybody, you just ascend to some other plane of existence, which I saw like all those things and stuff. And like, so you don't even think about hell. But I was like, oh my God, that was kind of something I had to wrap up my brain around. I was like, I was headed for hell. Like, I don't think, honestly, now that I look back, I don't think Jesus would have allowed that. He let me go down this path because I needed to, and
you
and he's gonna turn it around for me, for others and stuff. But how would I love him and just cling on to him for dear life if I didn't go down this path so far, and um and he works in mysterious ways, but I think, he always had control of it. But yeah, he let me hit rock bottom. And I don't even want to blame it on him. It was me. He let me make my own choices. And then
yeah,
he swooped in to save me. And
that's my father.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes you have to do that. Like, I think people that are parents with teenagers, you see them wanting to be rebellious and do all that. You almost kind of have to let them, and then you can't tell
Your
them
head.
not to do something. They're just gonna want to do it more. But like,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, I think Satan really thought he had me. He was like,
Mm,
this soul is mine, and I was consenting, which seems really unfair because, like, if I didn't read the small print, like, where was that? Like, I didn't sign up for that. So he tricks you, and so like, but yeah, I think Satan really thought he had won this soul, and but Jesus swooped in like last minute and like, no, she's mine, reclaiming, and
yeah.
and so um and he waited till I was a little bit familiar and comfortable within the Catholic Church too, because that's just like a foreign world if you're not familiar with it, and I wasn't. And then like, and everything lined up perfectly, where I started working with an exorcist priest, and yeah, I don't think I'd be doing nearly as well if it wasn't for them. So
Wow.
um
How was that? How was the procedure for that when they were telling you, like, so now you explained to us how you felt when they told you that, hey, like, you were, you were going through all those things because you were actually being oppressed. So how was that procedure afterwards when they told you that?
when who told me? The
The
priest?
Yeah.
Um
Sorry, I
yeah,
think it's
so
or a
yeah,
priest.
well, yeah, I was just kind of watching the priest talk on YouTube, and they explain it all, spiritual warfare, so perfectly. And then I saw, yeah, that's right, and that's what happened to me. And then I got to work with my own local priest after that, and I guess you're just kind of wondering how exorcism sessions are, or
Yes, yes, that's
uh,
okay. So how
yeah,
did that to that?
so I went to go, see him, and at first it's just, a lot of talking because he has to find out about your history, your background. They're looking for where the doorways opened up in somebody's life, um, and then he's just like, I just kind of need a diagnosis. So we went into the chapel, and he prayed over me. There's a whole thing they do with anointing with the oil and stuff, and when he as soon as he started praying in Latin, because Latin is the official church of the language, and the demons recognize it. They recognize the church. They recognize the authority of, God, and that he passed it down onto the priests and stuff. And though, so they react to that, just like in the
Is
New Testament.
that I'm sorry, is that like speaking in tongues? Is that the
What's that?
same? Is that like speaking in tongues when they speak Latin?
No. It's a rite, which is a prayer.
Okay.
So because some of their prayers are in English that they'll
Okay.
do, but some parts they do in Latin because it's just this ministry is like over 1,000 years old. So it's from the old language of the church, and the demons know it, and they respond to it, and he so as soon as he started doing the Latin prayers, which I don't understand Latin, but like I would have this immediate reaction, like something within me. I just like the floodgates just opened and just started crying and coughing, and like uncontrollably, and so he said, you know, we're dealing with a lot of oppression, but I don't think it's possession. Thankfully, that's what I wanted to hear, and and he said, and priests can be given special graces. And he said, I feel like this is stemming from the loss of childhood. And but then there were other things. Again, I'll try to kind of make it short, but the highlights of it was, you have to see him more than once for the most part. And so, like for the next session, again, as he's reciting all these Latin prayers, which is just invoking the authority of Jesus over them, and um, and they would react to like something within me just wanted, because they had me hold a crucifix too during the prayers, and I just wanted to throw that crucifix across the room. I just wanted to tell that priest to shut up. Like his prayers were bothering me so much, like it was like bothering me that I just wanted to run away. And it was taking some self-control on my part to not scream at the priest and to just run out of there. And um and just a lot of crying, coughing, and he said that that was a good sign. He said, what we're doing is bothering them. And I was like, yeah, definitely. Um, and then through a lot of on my own, like fasting and praying a lot for days and days and days, God revealed it to me that a big culprit was the spirits of divination, and that my third eye needed to be closed. And and so when, because there's also, in between seeing my actual priest, there's online deliverance prayers you can pray with the priest, and I would do that kind of in between my actual sessions. And that priest, Monsignor Rossetti, was like, a big culprit, is the spirits of divination. It's a serious thing. It's against the first, commandment, like not having other gods, because that's what all that is, like the Egyptian deities. In Hinduism, wasn't that thing, that elephant with like six arms, whatever? Like those are all
False.
demons posing as gods throughout the ages.
Yeah.
And so that's why that's why the Bible is very clear: no gods, no other gods but me, because they're not gods, they're demons.
Yeah.
And so so that was good. That was when God revealed that to me through the fasting and prayers. You need to close the occult third eye, and the spirits of divination is a big problem, is a culprit. And so I took it to my priest and told him that that's what came to me. And so he, because when I would try to close the third eye, because like I actually could feel it. It's not just a notion. It's an actual tangible thing. Like one of my clients, when I was doing healing sessions, told me, like, she's like, yeah, when you were working on me, my third eye starts tingling and opening, and and
Like a prayer,
pulsating. Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
someone's like this. Like that's how I
yeah.
remember that's how I felt for me when I was like 16, 17 years old. I remember feeling that pressure because I would put those it was like theta, it was called theta waves to open your third eye. And
Yeah.
you and I would have to and I laid down on my yoga mat and I was just like they're like in be in tune with the frequency of the waves and you're gonna start feeling pressure. And like whatever, it was like 10, 20 minutes in and I remember starting to feel that and that's in that time period I was getting so much sleep paralysis and I
Mm.
didn't know until like I would say like 7, 8 months ago, I heard a testimony of somebody saying, "Yeah, I was doing yoga and I started to get sleep paralysis in my third eye," and I was like, and then that's when everything clicked. But that's definitely very true because I felt that as well.
Yeah, mine would like really like pulsate and vibrate. And like, so
Wow.
this client was saying, she's like, and again, neither of us knew it was evil at the time, but she's like, yeah, whenever I do yoga, go to the yoga studio, my third eye, will start to open and stuff. So
Yeah.
like, um, and so then I was really seeing that, Christianity, a lot of people think that Christians are intolerant or closed-minded because they don't tolerate other religions or whatever. Like every other path is like, whatever you believe, whatever works for you, all paths lead to God. But that's not true. And so um I can't be tolerant. It's not of other things that are outside the Bible, because that would be tolerating demons, like, and their works, and I can't do that. So I can't pretend it's okay. So when I just flat out say, as offensive as it can come off, like, other religions are false religions, and like, um and so I knew that for sure, because that third eye thing. And that's, the Buddhists and the Hindus, they mark the third eye with a dot, and they revere it, they mark it to adorn it and revere it. And but I know it's an evil occult portal to the demonic. And so anyways, with like my own prayers and stuff, I couldn't close it. It didn't close. And so I took it to my priest, and he did a special anointing with oil and like prayers to close it. And I loved his prayers, the parts that I could understand were in English. So, he's addressing Satan. He's like, you have no business with this child of God. Why do you insist on staying when you know the battle's already won, and you're just gonna make it worse for yourself? And when he said that, the whatever it was mad. Like, wanted to tell him, like, again, I had to control myself, because I wanted to tell him, which was actually them wanting that I hated him. I wanted to tell that priest that I hated him and I was mad at him. And actually, there was so much crying because now I see that um, it was them crying um, because they don't want to hear the truth. Like, can you imagine what it's like to be eternally damned? You will never be reconciled with God, and you know your future is like this lake of fire, and like, and um, and so when like the priest would say stuff like that, the truth, they did not like it. That's they would cry, and I saw that they were really, when it came down to it, demons are just very, very sad and very angry spirits, and that was a turning point for me because I'm like, they're not really this powerful and scary. I mean, they are, but like, but I was like, no, when it comes down to it, they're just very sad and angry spirits. And I'm like, and they're pitiful, honestly. Like they made this horrible decision that was final. Because angels were created with this ability, this knowledge. They were there with God when they made their decision to rebel against him and reject him. And that's why their decision is so final. Like for us, we don't know God. We don't know God. Like, he just has to reveal himself and work with us when we make bad decisions, like just like Jesus said on the cross. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know. He forgives us and works with us and brings us to him. But angels, they don't get that because they did know and they rejected him. And so yeah, so the third eye closed, and then after that it did close. I don't feel it anymore, and so what went with it were like the false visions and messages that happened because of the third eye being open. What's that?
Right. That the visions and the intuitive healing that went away once that third eye closed.
Yeah, and I didn't engage in it anymore. I hated it. I rejected it
Yeah.
fully. So yeah, so that psychic-y stuff went away. And then, once in a while they'll try to give me a message, whether it's a dream or something. We're very, very vulnerable in our dream state. Um and and so, but it's easy now to see the attacks, and so I just don't pay attention to it, and for the most part it's not really a problem. I speak to him, he speaks to me through prayer and reading the word, and it's clear, and it's right, and you can tell the difference in my life, and that's how I prefer. I probably could like continue having supernatural strength, but I just don't. Like I just shun the whole thing. And you're right. Like that's I don't find it necessary to have to
Yeah.
any supernatural experience anymore. I don't like them.
Yeah. And God knows our hearts. So um yeah, I don't think that's like a salvation issue. That's just your journey and your relationship with God. And again, that's what ultimately comes down to. Um, but yeah, I loved your testimony when you told me on the phone before, scheduling this. I was like, I just want everybody to hear it. So I want to thank you for coming to my channel. I want to thank you for your time. And I want to ask you one final question before we close up. What would you say to people right now that are in the new age and, thinking of getting out or even struggling to get out of, pursuing the new age? What would you say to them right now if you had the chance?
Um,
Don't
well,
make me put you on the spot here.
oh, it's okay. Because once I was firmly out of the new age, I saw it was all deception. I try to reach out to to you
For
know former friends and stuff like that, and I fell on deaf ears. I just flat out would get ignored, or they'd be like, maybe we should just not be friends anymore. And then I was fine with that. But like, I guess there was so much I want to say because that is who I want to address. I think God has to open. a person's heart and ears to it. Like he said, man's heart has been hardened and his mind darkened. And so it's ultimately going to be God that opens someone's heart and it really enlightens their mind. And I think my message won't get to them unless God does that. But I will say that from experience, and that's the beauty of the experience that Jesus let me have in the New Age, is because I'm not like some closed-minded Christian, judgmental Christian. Like I was there, and so I guess the testimony has maybe a little bit more credibility because, how they kind of say don't knock it unless you tried it. And so for current New Agers, I would say that you're being duped. However it makes you feel, however empowered you feel, enlightened you feel, whatever knowledge you're being given. And even if you see positive things in your life, with money, you make money in the New Age, that's not validation of anything good. um the the devil the devil is in your life, and he's just leading you astray from God. And if you can put that aside, whatever ego or whatever, like you're very sure that you're right, you have the right path, and that you're seeing the big giant picture, because that's how I thought too. It's not true. You're living in a web of illusion and deception. And um and if you go to Christ, if you allow it, Christ in your life, and to be Lord God over your life, you're going to find yourself truly healed, holy, and righteous in a way that the New Age will never give you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Daisy. And thank you for everyone who's watching. Hopefully, this has tickled something in you, impacted you, and hopefully just completely, turned away from the New Age. I will be posting more testimonies. Hopefully, we can get Daisy again up here and discuss other topics that she's been through, like Reiki, astral projection. So I'm super excited, and thank you for everyone for watching. Bye.
Thank you.